My daughter was buried 31 years ago. But last week a hospital called at 3 a.m. and said your dot. I answered the phone on the third ring. It was 3:47 in the morning, and in 63 years, I've learned that calls at that hour never bring good news. Hello? Static crackled through the line. Then a woman's voice, professional but urgent. Is this William Garrison? Mr. Garrison, my name is Patricia Chin. I'm a social worker at St. Paul's Hospital in Vancouver. I'm calling about your daughter. My hand tightened around the phone. My daughter? Yes, sir. Jennifer. She's here and she's asking for you. The room tilted. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed. My wife looked at me startled. That's impossible, I said. The words felt mechanical, unreal. My daughter died 31 years ago. There was a pause. Mr. Garrison. I understand this is shocking. But the woman here has identification. She says she's Jennifer Garrison. She has a birthmark on her left shoulder blade shaped like a crescent moon. She told me you used to call it her lucky moon when she was little. I stopped breathing. Nobody knew about that. Nobody except us. We never mentioned it in missing person reports, police interviews, anywhere. It was ours. A private thing I'd made up when Jenny was 3 years old and terrified of the dark. Mr. Garrison, Patricia said gently, she's here. My voice cracked. Where did you say she is? St. Paul's Hospital. Psychiatric unit. She was brought in 2 days ago after a crisis intervention. She's stable now, but she's been asking for you. She says she finally knows who she is. I looked at the clock, 3:49 a.m. Vancouver was a 4-hour drive from Kelowna. 5 if traffic was bad. I'm on my way. I hung up before she could say anything else, before 31 years of grief could talk me out of it. My wife, Margaret, was fully awake now, watching me with that expression she only uses when she thinks I'm about to do something reckless. Who was that? She asked. Someone says they found Jenny. She sat up straight. Bill? I know. I was already pulling on my jeans, grabbing yesterday's shirt from the chair. I know how it sounds. But she knew about the birthmark, Maggie. She knew about the lucky moon. Margaret's face went pale. We'd had calls before, twice in the first decade. Con artists who'd read about our missing daughter and tried to exploit a grieving family. They always slipped up. A wrong detail, the wrong timeline, something off. But the lucky moon? Nobody could fake that. I'm coming with you, Margaret said, reaching for her clothes. No, I said it more gently than I felt. Not yet. Let me see first. If it's real, I'll call you immediately. If it's not. I couldn't finish the sentence. If it wasn't her, I'd fall apart, and I needed her here, steady, so I had something to come back to. She understood. After 42 years of marriage, she always understood. The drive to Vancouver was the longest 4 hours of my life. I'd made that trip hundreds of times, but never like this. Never with this fragile, burning hope lodged in my chest like a live coal. I kept the radio off. I needed silence, to think, to remember, to brace myself. Jennifer was 17 when she disappeared. December 14, 1993. She told us she was going to a friend's house after school. Later we found out she'd gone to meet a boy. Not the boy we thought she was seeing, a clean-cut kid from her physics class, but an older guy, 23, worked at a garage on the east side. They'd fought. He left her at a bus stop on Hastings Street at 11 p.m. Alone. Angry. In one of the worst parts of the city. She never came home. For 3 years we searched. Posters. Police. Private investigators we couldn't afford. Margaret stopped sleeping. I stopped everything that wasn't work or searching. Our marriage nearly collapsed under the weight of it. Then in 1996 they found remains. A female, approximately 17 to 19 years old, in a wooded area outside Mission. Dental records were inconclusive, the damage too extensive. But there was a jacket like hers. A silver ring that might have been hers. Forensics said they were 70% certain. 70% had been enough. We held a memorial. Buried an empty casket. Pretended to move on. Some days I convinced myself I had. I reached Vancouver just after 8 a.m. St. Paul's Hospital loomed in front of me, massive, cold, indifferent. I found parking, walked inside and asked for Patricia Chin. She met me in the lobby 15 minutes later, late 30s, kind eyes, the sort of person who'd seen too much suffering and somehow stayed soft. Mr. Garrison, she said, shaking my hand. Thank you for coming so quickly. I want to prepare you before you see her. I braced myself. Jennifer has been through significant trauma. She recently experienced what we believe was a dissociative episode triggered by recovered memories. She's been living under a different name for the past 3 decades. My throat tightened. What name? Melissa Morrison, Patricia said quietly. She's been in Vancouver the whole time, Mr. Garrison. Working different jobs over the years, mostly in the service industry. She'd lived on and off the streets. 3 days ago, she saw one of the old missing person posters for Jennifer Garrison. Someone had shared it on social media for a cold case awareness campaign. And when she saw the photo, something broke open inside her. We kept walking down the hallway. The sharp smell of antiseptic and floor polish filled the air. My heart was pounding so hard I thought my chest might give out. She's been having flashbacks, Patricia continued softly. Fragments of memory. A house with blue shutters. A mother who made cinnamon rolls on Saturday mornings. A father who built her a treehouse even though he was terrified of heights, so she had to climb up first to prove it was safe. I stopped dead in my tracks. The treehouse. I had completely forgotten about it. It was in our old backyard, the house we sold after Jenny disappeared because we couldn't stand to see her empty room every day. I'd built that treehouse the summer she turned 9. She'd laughed so hard watching me tremble on the ladder, gripping the rungs until my knuckles went white. The treehouse, I whispered. I built it, and I was terrified of heights. Patricia's expression shifted. Then you should know something before we go in, she said gently. She's scared. She's afraid you'll be angry, afraid you'll blame her for disappearing. Afraid you won't believe her. Or worse, that you will believe her and still won't want her back after all these years. That's insane, I muttered, heart twisting. Trauma isn't rational, she said softly. We stopped outside a door marked 412. She's in here, Patricia said. I'll give you privacy, but I'll be right outside. She pushed the door open. The room was small, standard hospital layout. A bed, a chair, a window with half-drawn blinds. A woman sat in the chair by the window, the morning sun behind her making her features hard to see. She stood slowly when I walked in, like she wasn't sure her legs would hold. I froze. Couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. She was older, of course, 48 now, not 17. Her hair was shorter and darker than Jenny's had been, streaked with gray. She was too thin, her face marked by years I hadn't been there to witness. She wore donated sweatpants, a faded t-shirt, and her shoulders pulled inward like she'd spent a lifetime trying to disappear. But her eyes were Jenny's. That same rare color, gray-blue with flecks of green. That same gaze, direct, a little defiant even when she was scared. Dad. That one word shattered me. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times in the early years. In my imagination I was always steady, calm, the rock she could fall into. Instead, I stood there shaking, tears streaming down my face. She took a small, hesitant step toward me. I don't remember everything yet, she whispered. But I remember you. I remember the treehouse. Learning to ride my bike in the driveway. How you ran behind me for hours even though your back hurt. I remember you reading Narnia to me before bed, and doing all the silly voices. Jenny? I don't know if I can be her again, she said, voice cracking. I don't know if I'm still that person. I've been someone else for so long. I closed the distance between us in 3 steps and pulled her into my arms. She stiffened at first, unsure, then collapsed against me like her strings had been cut. She didn't smell like my daughter. Not like the girl who used strawberry shampoo and drowned herself in her mother's perfume. She smelled like hospital soap, fear, and decades of surviving. But when I closed my eyes, I felt the shape of her, the way her head fit against my shoulder, the way she'd always been tall for her age. You're alive, I whispered. You're alive. That's all that matters. We stayed like that for a long time. Eventually she sat in the chair and I sat on the edge of the bed. Slowly, brokenly, she began to share what she remembered. The night she disappeared. Getting off the bus at Hastings in Maine, crying and furious, at her boyfriend, at herself, at the world. Walking without direction. A woman approaching her. Friendly. Concerned. Offering coffee, a safe place. Everything after that was fragments, shattered pieces of a nightmare she'd buried so deeply she'd forgotten it ever happened. There were other girls. Houses that changed. Or maybe they were moved between houses. She didn't know. Years of dissociation. Years of being Melissa Morrison, a girl who appeared in the system with fabricated documents and a fake past. Years of scraping by, working where she could, doing what she had to do to survive. The memories started returning in pieces over the last 5 years. Small things that didn't belong to Melissa's life. Dreams of blue shutters. Cinnamon rolls. A father afraid of heights. But when she saw the poster 3 days ago, her own 17-year-old face staring back from a screen, it all came flooding in. "I lost myself," she whispered. "They say it was a psychotic break, but it felt like waking up. Like I'd been asleep for 31 years and suddenly remembered I was supposed to be someone else." I listened. Didn't interrupt. Just let her talk. Some things made sense. Others were fragmented the way trauma memories usually are. But the details, those small, intimate details, those were real. How I always burned the popcorn on movie nights. The scar on her knee from falling off her bike at 7. The fight about her curfew. The last conversation we'd ever had. How she'd screamed, "I hate you," before slamming the door. "I didn't hate you," she whispered. "I need you to know that. I was 17 and stupid, but I didn't hate you. I know," I said, my voice barely working. "I know, sweetheart." A gentle knock on the door. Patricia stepped in. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but Jennifer needs rest. And Mr. Garrison, there are some practical matters we should discuss." We stepped into the hallway together. Her voice softened. "We'll need to do a DNA test to confirm her identity," Patricia said. "Though based on everything you've told me, I don't think there's any real doubt." I nodded numb. "The police will want to interview her. And the trafficking task force is going to be very interested in her case. She'll need extensive therapy. Mr. Garrison, she's had what amounts to a complete identity collapse. Integrating everything is going to take months, more likely years." "Whatever she needs," I said immediately. "There's something else." Patricia hesitated. "The remains you buried in 1996. We'll need to re-examine them. If Jennifer is alive, then someone else's daughter is in that grave. Another family deserves the truth." I hadn't thought about that. I'd been so consumed by the miracle in front of me that the rest hit me like a blow to the chest. For 31 years we'd mourned our daughter. But somewhere out there, another family had been searching, waiting for answers we'd unknowingly taken from them. "I'll contact the police," I said quietly. "Today. We'll do whatever needs to be done." Patricia studied me for a moment. "I need to ask you something difficult, Mr. Garrison. Are you prepared for this? Not just today, long term. Jennifer isn't the girl you lost. She may never fully be that girl again. She's a 48-year-old woman with 3 decades of trauma. Survival changes people. Some of what she carries you might struggle to understand. She's my daughter." The words came out fiercer than I intended. I don't care who she had to become to survive. I don't care what was done to her or what she's done. She's my daughter. I've had 31 years to grieve her. I'm not wasting another second. I called Margaret from the parking lot and told her everything. She was in the car before I could finish. She refused to be talked out of coming, and I didn't try. I needed her. I needed her strength more than I'd ever admit out loud. The DNA test itself took 10 minutes. The waiting took 2 weeks. Those were the longest 2 weeks of my life. Longer even than the first 2 after Jenny vanished, because back then hope was simple. Now hope was tangled with guilt, fear, and a desperate need for this miracle to be real. Margaret and I visited her every day. She wanted to be called Jenny again. She said Melissa Morrison was a name she would slowly lay to rest. The dissociative episodes grew fewer. She became more present. Each day she remembered something new: our blue-shuttered house, her mother's cinnamon rolls, our old cat Winston who died when she was 15. Then there were memories from the missing years, things we couldn't verify, things that made Margaret cry silently beside her, things that made me want to tear the world apart with my bare hands. But we listened. We stayed. We bore witness because that was what she needed. 2 weeks later, Patricia called me into her office. "It's a match, Mr. Garrison," she said. "Jennifer is your daughter." I couldn't speak. I just nodded. "There's more. The police have reopened the investigation into the 1996 remains. They were able to extract DNA and run it through the national database. They found a match. The girl in the grave was Rebecca Kim. She went missing from Surrey in 1995. Her family has been notified. Another family. Another parent who had spent decades not knowing. At least now they would have answers. At least now they could lay their real daughter to rest. Nothing could make what happened right, but maybe the truth offered some small fragment of peace. Jenny came home 3 weeks after that first phone call. Not to our condo in Kelowna, we'd downsized long ago, but to a small apartment in Vancouver. She wasn't ready to leave the city. She needed to stay close to her therapists, to Patricia, and to the world she'd known as Melissa. Even if she was slowly letting that identity go. We helped her furnish the apartment. Margaret bought dishes and towels and a comfortable chair. I built her a bookshelf, joking that I still wasn't any better with a hammer than I'd been when I built the treehouse. She gave me a small, fragile smile, one that reached her eyes. Our sons came to meet her. That part was hard. David and Michael had been 14 and 11 when Jenny disappeared. Their memories of her were softened by childhood. They remembered a sister who laughed at their jokes and stole their cereal, not a 48-year-old woman shaped by 3 decades of survival. But they tried. They brought photo albums. They helped her fill in the blank spaces. David told her about his kids, her niece and nephew she'd never met. Michael told her about his husband and the life he'd built. She cried through much of it, mourning not just what she'd lost but what they had lost too. But slowly, carefully, we built something new. The police investigation into her past continued. She was able to give them pieces, names, places, moments, even though much was still lost in the fog of trauma. The task force explained there'd been a trafficking ring in the downtown East Side for decades. Most of the original perpetrators were dead or imprisoned, but every detail Jenny gave helped them close gaps. She testified in closed session. Margaret and I waited outside holding hands while our daughter relived horrors she had spent a lifetime trying to forget. When she came out, shaking, we took her for coffee. She drank it constantly now. She said the warmth helped. "I thought I'd feel better," she whispered once. "Telling them everything. I thought it would help." "Does it?" I asked. "I don't know yet." She stared into the mug. "Ask me in a year." That was 4 months ago. Now it was March. The cherry blossoms were starting to bloom in Vancouver when Jenny called and asked if we wanted to visit. We always did. She opened the door when we arrived and I was struck by how different she looked. She'd gained weight, healthy weight. Margaret kept saying she'd been dangerously thin when we found her. But now she had color in her face again. Now her shoulders weren't hunched quite so tightly. Now she stood a little taller. She was becoming herself again, whoever that self turned out to be. Her hair had grown out, and for the first time I could really see the auburn color I remembered from her childhood. She wore jeans and a sweater that actually fit her, not the donated clothes from the hospital. She looked more like herself now. Not the 17-year-old who vanished, and not entirely Melissa Morrison either. Someone new. Someone learning to be both. "I made coffee," she said. Then, almost shyly, "and I tried to make cinnamon rolls. Mom's recipe. I had to call her 3 times to get it right, and they're definitely not as good as hers." "They'll be perfect," Margaret said, pulling her into a hug. We sat at her small kitchen table, eating slightly overdone cinnamon rolls that tasted like forgiveness. Like second chances. Like all the Saturday mornings we never had, but maybe still could. Jenny told us she'd been approved for vocational training. She wanted to study social work. She wanted to help trafficking survivors. She wanted to turn her nightmare into something that could save someone else. I looked at her and felt something close to awe. This woman who had survived the unsurvivable. Who had lost herself and still found a way back. Who chose healing over bitterness, movement over paralysis. "I've been thinking about the treehouse," she said suddenly. "Dad, do you remember how scared you were of heights?" "I remember." "Why did you build it if you were so afraid?" I looked at her, this daughter who had been dead and was alive, who had been lost and was found, who had been Melissa and was Jenny and was still becoming herself. "Because you wanted one," I said softly. "Because you were mine. And I would have climbed Everest if you'd asked me to." She smiled then. A real smile. The kind that reached her eyes. "That's good," she said. "Because I think I might need you to climb a few more mountains before we're done." "Then that's what I'll do," I told her. "However many mountains. However long it takes. I'm not going anywhere." And I meant it. We'd lost 31 years. Nothing would ever give them back. But we had now. We had whatever time was left. And I intended to make every second count. Because my daughter had come home, not the same, not whole, not fully healed, but alive. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.